The price of freedom. Rylan Nash hadn't meant to become a hero. Heroes died young, and at 36, he'd grown quite fond of staying alive. But as he stared through the reinforced glass of Europa Station's restricted research wing, he knew his comfortable life of smuggling medical supplies was about to end. The being floating in the containment chamber looked like a fragment of universe-given form. Her crystalline body pulsed with internal light, casting rainbow fractals across the sterile white walls. She wasn't supposed to exist. Crystalline sentient beings were the stuff of space fairy tales. Yet there she was, suspended in a magnetic field, her faceted surface reflecting the harsh laboratory lights. Beautiful specimen, isn't she? Dr. Harrison's voice made Ryland's skin crawl. The head researcher's smile never reached his eyes. Pure silicon-based consciousness. The only one we've managed to capture intact. Ryland forced himself to nod, maintaining his cover as a potential investor. The fake credentials had cost him 3 months' worth of smuggling profits, but they'd gotten him inside the facility. How did you find her? Pure luck. A mining operation in the Kuiper Belt. The others shattered themselves rather than be captured. Harrison tapped the glass. This one's different. More resilient. Or perhaps just more afraid. The crystalline being shifted slightly, and Ryland caught a glimpse of patterns moving beneath her surface, complex geometries that reminded him of star maps. He'd seen those patterns before, in the encrypted transmission that had led him here. Someone inside the facility had been sending out distress signals, not in any human language, but in mathematical sequences that had caught the attention of his ship's navigation system. And you're certain she's sentient? Rylan asked, buying time as he memorized the security layout. 3 guards at the main entrance, 2 more by the containment controls, and automated defense systems throughout. Oh, very. Harrison's pride was evident. She's tried to communicate. Mathematical equations, mostly. Complex theoretical physics we're still trying to decode. But lately. He frowned. Lately, she's been silent. Almost as if she's waiting for something. Or someone, Rylan thought. The distress signal had contained more than just coordinates. There had been a name, repeated in prime number sequences, Nashira. He looked at the crystalline being again and saw her surface ripple, just slightly, like starlight on water. The containment field, Rylan said, gesturing to the control panel. How does it work? Harrison launched into a technical explanation about magnetic resonance and quantum containment protocols. Rylan only half listened, his attention on the subtle ways Nashira's light patterns changed when Harrison mentioned key systems. She was aware, all right. And she was mapping her own prison. We're working on replication, Harrison continued. If we can understand how her consciousness is stored in crystalline form, the applications would be revolutionary. Data storage, quantum computing, maybe even consciousness transfer. Human consciousness in crystalline form, Rylan mused, not having to fake his unease. Immortality in a diamond shell. Precisely. Harrison beamed. Though we'll need to solve the ethical concerns before commercial applications, of course. Ethical concerns. Rylan had seen the restricted sections of Harrison's research files, obtained through channels that had cost him the last of his savings. The ethical concerns included forced consciousness extraction, crystalline matrix destabilization, and something called geometric realignment that had made him sick to read about. As they turned to leave, Rylan caught one last glimpse of Nashira. Her surface had stilled, but the light within her pulsed once, deliberately, like a heartbeat. Or a signal. That night, in his rented quarters on Europa Station, Rylan reviewed his options. The facility's security was state-of-the-art, the staff were well-trained, and he was running out of both time and money. But when he closed his eyes, he saw Nashira's light patterns, spelling out equations that spoke of freedom and fear in the universal language of mathematics. He opened his encrypted comm channel and sent a message to the only person he knew who might be able to help, Dr. Vivian Thorne, a brilliant AI specialist who'd left academia under mysterious circumstances. They'd worked together once, years ago, when she'd needed certain restricted materials delivered quietly. The response came within minutes. Interesting puzzle. My usual fee? Rylan looked at his nearly empty credit account and typed back, double it if we succeed. Deal, Vivian replied. Send me everything you have. And Rylan? Try not to get killed before I arrive. He stared at the message, then at the distant lights of the research facility, visible through his window. Heroes died young, but some things were worth the risk. Tomorrow, he'd begin planning how to break an impossible being out of an impregnable facility. For now, he watched Europa's ice-covered surface reflect Jupiter's light, and wondered if Nashira could see it too, through all her prison's walls. Hold on, he whispered to the night. Help is coming. Breaking the code. Dr. Vivian Thorne arrived on Europa Station looking more like a corporate accountant than a rogue AI specialist. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her augmented reality glasses continuously scrolled with data only she could see. She took one look at Rylan's cramped quarters and sighed. When you said you had an interesting puzzle, I didn't expect it to be quite this interesting. She gestured at the holographic display showing Nashira's containment chamber. A crystalline consciousness. Do you have any idea how rare these beings are? Rare enough that 6 others chose to shatter rather than be captured, Rylan replied, watching Vivian's expression darken. Smart of them. She pulled up more displays, her fingers dancing through the air as she manipulated the data. The containment protocols are fascinating. They're not just holding her, they're studying her neural pathways. Every crystalline facet is a data point, every light pattern a thought. Can you break through them? Breaking through isn't the problem. Vivian's glasses reflected cascading lines of code. Keeping her stable during the process is. These beings aren't just conscious, they're quantum conscious. Their thoughts exist in multiple states simultaneously. Disrupt the containment field wrong, and we could collapse her wave function permanently. Rylan remembered the subtle patterns he'd seen moving through Nashira's form. She's been communicating. Mathematical equations. Show me. He pulled up the recorded patterns, and Vivian's eyes widened. This isn't just mathematics. It's a quantum programming language. She's been mapping the facility's systems, probing for weaknesses. She paused, adjusting her glasses. And she's been watching you. What? These patterns here, they changed when you entered the facility. She recognized something in you. Something that made her reach out. Vivian's voice softened. When was the last time you had your neural pattern scanned, Rylan? He shifted uncomfortably. Not since the military. The experimental pilot program. The one that tried to enhance human consciousness to interface directly with ship AIs. Vivian nodded slowly. Your brain patterns. They must resonate on frequencies similar to her crystalline structure. That's why you could sense her distress signal when others couldn't. Before Rylan could respond, his security scanner beeped. He checked the feed and cursed. Harrison's team is moving up their timeline. They're preparing for something called total geometric analysis tomorrow. Vivian's face went pale. We need to move now. That procedure, it's not analysis. It's dissection. They're going to try to map her entire consciousness by breaking her down facet by facet. Tonight then, Rylan said, checking his weapons. Can you get us in? Better. Vivian smiled grimly. I can get her out. But I'll need direct access to the facility's quantum mainframe. And you'll need to keep her consciousness stable during transfer. How? Remember those neural enhancements from your pilot days? She pulled out a sleek neural interface device. Time to wake them up. Your brain patterns might be the only thing that can guide her through the transition without shattering. The next few hours were a blur of preparation. Vivian wrote viral code designed to infiltrate the facility systems while Rylan studied the guard rotations. They had one shot at this. If they failed, Nashira would die, and they'd likely join her. As midnight approached, Rylan felt the neural interface activate, sending familiar tingles through his skull. In the years since the military program, he'd suppressed his enhanced abilities, finding them more curse than gift. But now, as Vivian's code began its work, he felt his consciousness expanding, reaching out toward the quantum frequencies where Nashira existed. Her presence hit him like a wave of starlight. Images flooded his mind, vast crystalline cities orbiting distant suns, thoughts transmitted through lattices of living light, and a terrible darkness that had scattered her people across the galaxy. She was not just a being of silicon and light, she was a repository of her entire civilization's knowledge. And she had chosen him, recognizing in his enhanced neural patterns an echo of her own quantum nature. Ready? Vivian asked, her fingers poised over the final command sequence. Rylan reached out with his enhanced senses, feeling Nashira's consciousness brush against his own. In that touch, he felt her trust, her fear, and her determination. Ready. As Vivian's code launched its assault on the facility systems, Rylan closed his eyes and prepared to guide a star's worth of consciousness through the quantum void. Whatever happened next would either free Nashira or shatter them both into stardust. Outside, Europa's ice fields reflected Jupiter's light, waiting for the moment when either a new dawn would break, or all their hopes would fracture into endless night. Shattered chains. The first alarm that triggered in Europa Station's research wing wasn't for an intruder, it was for a power fluctuation. As Vivian's code spread through the quantum mainframe, systems began failing in seemingly random patterns. Security cameras looped old footage. Door locks cycled between states. And in the containment chamber, the lights flickered like dying stars. Rylan moved through the shadows of the facility, his enhanced consciousness singing with Nashira's presence. Through their connection, he could feel her anticipation, her fear, and something else, a warning she couldn't quite communicate through the quantum static of her prison. Guards approaching, Vivian's voice whispered through his neural link. 3 of them, coming from the east corridor. He pressed himself against the wall, letting the patrol pass. They looked nervous, speaking in hushed tones about the system failures. None of them noticed the shimmer in the air as Rylan's active camouflage bent light around him. Harrison's in his office, Vivian reported. He's trying to bypass my virus. We have maybe 20 minutes before he succeeds. Rylan reached the main laboratory and found it deserted, exactly as planned. Vivian's false alerts had drawn the staff to other sections of the facility. But as he approached Nashira's containment chamber, he felt her consciousness pulse with urgent warning. Too late, he saw why. Fascinating, isn't it? Harrison stepped from behind an equipment bank, holding a quantum destabilizer. How she tries to protect you. Even now, trapped in our containment field, she reaches out to warn you of danger. Rylan's hand moved toward his weapon, but Harrison's aim was steady. I wouldn't. This destabilizer is linked to her containment field. One wrong move, and her consciousness collapses. How long have you known that someone would try to free her? Since the moment we captured her. Harrison's smile was cold. These beings never travel alone. There are always connections. We just had to wait for the right one to appear. Through their quantum link, Rylan felt Nashira's consciousness surge with something beyond fear, rage. Not at her captivity, but at what Harrison's words implied. The other crystalline beings, Rylan said slowly. The ones that shattered. You didn't find them by accident. We learned to track their quantum signatures. To predict where they'd appear. Harrison's eyes gleamed with fanatic intensity. Do you understand what they are? What they carry within their crystalline matrices. The complete knowledge of a civilization that had mastered quantum consciousness. Imagine what humanity could become with that knowledge. By torturing and destroying sentient beings? A small price for transcendence. Harrison gestured at Nashira with the destabilizer. And now we have both a crystalline consciousness and a human mind capable of interfacing with it. The military program that enhanced you, did you think that was coincidence? We've been preparing for this moment for years. Ryland's blood ran cold as the implications hit him. His enhancement program, the distress signal that led him here, none of it was random. They had engineered this entire situation. But they hadn't counted on Vivian. The lights went out. In the sudden darkness, Ryland felt Nashira's consciousness explode outward, no longer contained by the failing field. Her light filled the chamber, refracting through every surface, turning the laboratory into a kaleidoscope of quantum possibilities. Harrison fired the destabilizer, but its beam passed through empty air. Nashira's physical form had already shifted, existing in multiple states simultaneously. Her consciousness brushed Ryland's mind, and in that touch, he understood what he had to do. He opened himself fully to the quantum connection, letting his enhanced neural patterns synchronize with her quantum state. Pain lanced through his skull as human consciousness met crystalline geometry, but he held on, becoming an anchor point for her transformation. Stop them. Harrison screamed into his calm, lock down all. The rest of his words were lost as Nashira's light engulfed them both. Through their merged consciousness, Ryland saw the truth of her journey, not a random fugitive, but a deliberate messenger, seeking worlds where quantum consciousness was beginning to emerge. Worlds like Earth, where humanity's first experiments with quantum computing were opening doors they didn't understand. She had let herself be captured, knowing it would lead to this moment. Knowing she would find minds ready to bridge the gap between classical and quantum existence. As security forces burst into the chamber, Ryland felt Vivian's code complete its work. The facility's quantum mainframe overloaded, sending cascading failures through every system. In the chaos, Nashira's physical form resolved into a new configuration, a crystalline structure that encompassed both her consciousness and a protected space for Ryland's mind. They moved as one through the facility's disintegrating security, past stunned guards and failing containment fields. Harrison's shouts faded behind them as they reached the emergency airlock where Vivian waited with their escape ship. As they fled into space, Ryland felt Nashira begin the delicate process of separating their consciousness. But something had changed. The quantum bridge between them had left an imprint, a permanent connection that whispered of possibilities neither of them had imagined. And in the depths of space, other crystalline beings were awakening, drawn by the signal of a successful first contact. The real revolution was about to begin. Stardust Revolution. The escape ship's quantum drive hummed as they pushed through the outer reaches of Jupiter's magnetosphere. Ryland sat in the pilot's chair, his consciousness still reverberating from its merger with Nashira's. In the cargo hold behind him, her crystalline form pulsed with shifting patterns of light, each one a thought or memory they now shared. Your neural patterns are still synchronized with hers, Vivian said, studying the readings on her displays. The connection should have broken when we left Europa, but it's actually getting stronger. It's not just a connection anymore. Ryland watched Jupiter's storms swirl beneath them. When our minds merged, I saw what she really is, what all the crystalline beings are. They're not just refugees. They're guides. Nashira's light brightened in agreement, and images flooded Ryland's mind, countless worlds across the galaxy, each approaching the threshold of quantum consciousness. The crystalline beings had scattered themselves deliberately, seeking civilizations ready to make the leap from classical computing to true quantum awareness. Harrison's team got it backwards, Vivian realized, her augmented reality glasses reflecting Nashira's shifting patterns. They thought they were studying her, but she was studying us. Testing our readiness. Before Ryland could respond, the ship's sensors screamed. 3 pursuit vessels had emerged from Europa Station, their weapons powered up and tracking systems locked on. Corporate security forces, Vivian said grimly. Harrison must have called in everything he had. The first volley of plasma fire streaked past their hull, close enough to make the shields flare. Ryland's enhanced reflexes took over as he threw the ship into a series of evasive maneuvers, but he knew they couldn't outrun their pursuers forever. Then he felt Nashira's consciousness brush his again, offering not just guidance but partnership. Without hesitation, he opened himself to the connection. The ship's quantum drive resonated with their merged consciousness, responding to commands that transcended classical physics. Reality seemed to blur around them as Ryland navigated through quantum probabilities rather than normal space, each course correction existing in multiple states until observed. The pursuit ship's targeting systems couldn't lock onto a vessel that existed in quantum superposition. Their weapons' fire passed through space where their ship had been, or might be, or never was. Impossible, Vivian breathed, watching the sensor readings. You're not just flying the ship, you're quantum tunneling it through spacetime. But the effort was taking its toll. Ryland felt his consciousness stretching, human neural patterns struggling to maintain quantum coherence. Through their link, he sensed Nashira's concern. This level of merger wasn't meant to last, it could burn out his enhanced neural pathways completely. Then a new signal caught their attention, a crystalline resonance, broadcasting from somewhere in the asteroid belt. Other beings like Nashira, reaching out with thoughts that sparkled like starlight. They weren't alone. The crystalline signal grew stronger, and with it came understanding. All across the solar system, other crystalline beings had hidden themselves, waiting for this moment. Each had found their own human connections, people with the potential for quantum consciousness. Now those connections were awakening. On Mars, a quantum research lab reported impossible readings as their crystals began to pulse with light. In orbital habitats around Saturn, meditation crystals used by deep space crews suddenly sparkled with new awareness. And in hidden bases throughout the belt, more of Harrison's captured beings were breaking free, guided by the example of Nashira's escape. It's starting, isn't it? Vivian asked softly. The revolution you saw in her memories. Ryland nodded, feeling the growing web of quantum connections spreading through the solar system. Not a violent revolution. An evolution. The crystalline beings aren't here to change us by force, they're here to show us what we can become. Through their link, Nashira shared visions of the future, human consciousness expanding beyond classical limitations, quantum computing evolving into true quantum awareness, and a bridge forming between organic and crystalline life. It was why she had chosen him, why she had let herself be captured. Humanity needed to understand both the promise and the peril of quantum consciousness. The pursuit ships were falling behind now, their conventional drives no match for quantum navigation. But Ryland could feel his enhanced neural pathways beginning to fail under the strain of prolonged quantum merger. We need to find somewhere safe, Vivian said, noting his distress. Somewhere we can help others understand what's happening without Harrison's people finding us. Another crystalline signal pulsed from the belt, stronger than the others. Through their fading connection, Nashira showed Ryland an image, a hidden sanctuary among the asteroids, where other crystalline beings had gathered with their human partners. A place where quantum consciousness could be explored safely, away from those who would exploit it. As they changed course for the belt, Ryland felt Nashira begin to gently disengage their merged consciousness, leaving behind not emptiness but a new way of perceiving reality. He wasn't just enhanced anymore, he had become something else, a bridge between human and crystalline thought. Behind them, Jupiter's storms continued to rage, but ahead lay a field of asteroids glittering with possibility, each one potentially harboring another awakening consciousness. The real challenge wasn't escaping Harrison's forces, it was preparing humanity for what came next. The revolution wouldn't be fought with weapons, but with understanding. And it was already too late to stop it. Symphony of Stars. Deep in the asteroid belt, what appeared to be a simple mining outpost was something far more extraordinary. The asteroid's hollowed interior pulsed with crystalline light, each faceted chamber holding stories of transformation. 1 month after their escape from Europa, Ryland stood in the central chamber, watching humans and crystalline beings learn to bridge the gap between their forms of consciousness. Another group arrived from Mars this morning, Vivian said, her augmented reality glasses now modified to track quantum patterns. Scientists, engineers, artists, all of them reporting the same dreams of crystalline cities and quantum horizons. Ryland nodded, feeling the harmonic resonance of dozens of awakening minds. His own connection to quantum consciousness had stabilized, no longer threatening to burn out his neural pathways. Instead, it had evolved into something sustainable, a permanent bridge between classical and quantum thought. Nashira floated nearby, her crystalline form refracting the light of other beings like her. Through their lingering connection, Ryland sensed her satisfaction. The sanctuary had grown faster than anyone expected, becoming exactly what she had envisioned, a place where humanity could safely take its first steps into quantum consciousness. But their peace was about to be shattered. The proximity alerts screamed to life. A fleet of ships had entered the belt, corporate security forces, military vessels, and something else. Something worse. Harrison, Ryland said, recognizing the quantum signature of the lead vessel. He's found us. And he's got new technology. Through the sanctuary's sensors, they watched Harrison's ship approach. Its hull was studded with crystalline shards, fragments of captured beings, forced into a grotesque merger of human technology and quantum consciousness. Even at this distance, Ryland could feel the pain of the shattered crystals, their once harmonious thoughts twisted into weapons. He's broadcasting a message, Vivian reported, her face pale. It's an ultimatum. Either we surrender all crystalline beings for controlled integration into human technology, or he'll demonstrate the military applications of forced quantum consciousness on every habitat in the belt. The sanctuary's inhabitants gathered in the central chamber, humans and crystalline beings united in crisis. Through their growing network of quantum connections, Ryland felt their fear, their anger, and beneath it all, their determination. Nashira moved to the center of the chamber, her light pulsing with purpose. Through their connection, she shared not just thoughts but a plan, one that had been in motion since before her capture on Europa. The crystalline beings, Ryland said slowly, understanding dawning, they didn't just come here to guide us. They came here to join with us. Not through force or technology, but through choice. Through harmony. Vivian's eyes widened as she checked her readings. The quantum signatures. They're aligning. Not just between humans and crystals, but between all of us, Ryland finished. Every mind in this sanctuary, crystalline and organic, creating a quantum symphony. Harrison's voice crackled through the calm, you have 1 hour to surrender, or we open fire. But in that hour, something extraordinary began to unfold. Under Nashira's guidance, the quantum consciousness of the crystalline beings began to resonate with the awakening quantum potential in human minds. Not a forced merger like Harrison's abomination, but a willing partnership of thought and purpose. Ryland felt it building like music, each mind adding its own note to a growing chorus of quantum possibility. Human creativity merged with crystalline harmony, spinning new realities between the notes of existence. When Harrison's fleet opened fire, their weapons met not shields but probability itself. The sanctuary's combined consciousness shifted the asteroid through quantum states, making every attack hit where they weren't, couldn't be, never had been. Impossible. Harrison's voice shook with rage. You're disrupting reality itself. No, Ryland responded, his voice carrying the weight of countless others. We're expanding it. The sanctuary's quantum chorus reached its crescendo. Through their shared consciousness, every being in the asteroid contributed to what came next. The crystalline beings offered their understanding of quantum existence, while human minds provided imagination and innovation. Together, they wove a new kind of space around Harrison's fleet, one where quantum probability collapsed into certainty. The attacking ships found themselves embedded in a crystalline lattice of frozen possibility. Not destroyed, but transformed. Their weapons became useless, their engines inert. And in that moment of enforced quantum clarity, every mind aboard those ships experienced what Rylan had felt in his first merger with Nashira, the true potential of quantum consciousness, unbound by fear or force. Harrison's scream of rage turned to one of wonder, then silence. In the aftermath, as the lattice dissolved and the ships hung powerless in space, Rylan felt Nashira's consciousness embrace his one final time. But now he understood that their connection had never been about just two beings. It was about showing humanity a path forward, not through domination of quantum reality, but through partnership with it. The sanctuary became a beacon, drawing others who dreamed of crystalline cities and quantum thoughts. The revolution Harrison had feared never came. Instead, humanity faced something far more challenging, the opportunity to evolve. Years later, witnesses on Earth would report seeing crystalline lights in the night sky, moving like stars that had learned to dance. But they weren't stars, and they weren't just crystals. They were what happened when two forms of consciousness learned to create harmony from their differences. And somewhere in that quantum chorus, Rylan and Nashira's song continued, proof that the greatest revolutions begin not with a shout, but with a shared dream of what might be.